Hey friends, it's Jasmine, and I hope that you all are doing well. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I am a witchy content creator here on YouTube, where I talk about my personal experiences in the craft, covenry, folklore, paganism, all of those delicious things. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. And make sure to like this video and subscribe if you aren't already. So today I want to talk about like some witchy books. Oftentimes I'm asked like, what would you recommend to kind of get started in witchcraft? What books should I look at? And I think books are a very important thing in the craft. And I think that any witch who is serious about their craft and seriously dedicated to growing in their craft, you know, educational content is key. However, the books that we have recommended from like the 90s are obviously different than books that we're recommending from the 2000s. And I think especially with this whole like new millennium, it's kind of created like a shift in some of the books that are being published. When I think of some of the books that were very, very popular when I was kind of coming into the craft, I think of like authors such as Christopher Penczak, Adane McCoy, Silver Raven Wolf, Scott Cunningham. These are all authors that have lots of publications, especially more from a Wiccan slant, that are pretty popular. And, you know, some of those books I still really enjoy as well. But I do think that it's important for you to kind of get outside of your comfort zone and really read books from multiple different aspects of the craft. And when it comes to finding a good place to get started, the best thing for you to do is just jump in and don't necessarily worry about, you know, this or that. Just literally get started somewhere. Whatever it is that you are interested in, if it's herbs, if it's crystals, if it's pagan gods, if it's divination, whatever it is that you might be interested in, start there. And I assure you, one thing that there is to know when it comes to witchcraft is it very much is a spiral path. So you can completely devour an entire subject material. And chances are you will still revisit that in 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years, and you will look at it with a new pair of eyes and you will learn something new on that subject again. I also think that when it comes to occult education, craft education, it can go beyond books as well. I think especially living in the aeon that we are, living in this day and age, I think vlogs, like watching videos here on YouTube, whether you're watching me or you're watching another content creator, I know that for myself in my practice, like I love watching other content creators. I love listening to other people's perspectives and their experiences and their journey. And I've learned a lot just from vlogs. Of course, you have blogs as well, like people who, you know, publish articles. There's lots of good stuff on Pathos. If you're not already familiar with that, you can check that out and you can fall down the rabbit hole there. I've also there are times where when I'm researching something or trying to learn about something, I will definitely also fall down a rabbit hole on Reddit as well. So when it comes to the craft, I think, you know, people learning and becoming educated, a lot of this I think was oral traditions and word of mouth and very focused on mentorships. And I'm not necessarily saying that I think mentorship is bad, but I do think that, of course, you want to be careful. You want to make sure that you're seeking a reputable teacher and mentor, someone who really understands what they are talking about, someone who is also reputable in the community. However, you can also teach yourself a lot of things. You can also self-initiate yourself into a lot of these hidden mysteries, in the sense that if you're interested in various types of witchcraft, there are so many books published by authors who are eager for you to read their books. So books, of course, are going to be a main source of education, but like I've mentioned earlier, I think vlogs and I think blogs can be great sources of education as well that maybe witches 3-4 generations ago didn't necessarily have the same sort of access to. I often kind of joke and call Google
like the greatest grimoire,
because chances are, if there's some information that you are looking for, with a little bit of effort, you can find something on Google. Now, like I said, the keyword is a little bit of effort. You have to kind of get used to searching for things and wording your searches in a way that are going to give you results. But truly, Google is kind of this big, great grimoire. As you can probably see behind me, and maybe you've seen some of my other videos, I love books. I love having my library here at my home. I love having my little curated occult library. Lots of my friends or coven mates who come over oftentimes will let me borrow books and they'll sit in my library, or they will borrow some of my books. And it's something in my practice that I feel very privileged that I'm able to have a physical, tangible occult library. However, also with Kindle and audiobooks, they can offer you a great way for you to be able to learn and research and understand different craft traditions and practices without having to dedicate the physical space, like my bookshelves as an example here. My bookshelves, I'm constantly reorganizing and rearranging them. And if you've been watching my content for a while, you've probably seen how my bookshelves have changed over time. I have one shelf that's just completely my own personal apothecary, where I have various herbs and oils that I've made. And then I have 2 other shelves of just books. And even still, there are times where I've had a book, I've sat with it, and maybe 5 years from the time where I purchased it, it no longer necessarily speaks to me. And so I will re-gift it to someone who it is speaking to, or I'll take it to Half Price Books. And that kind of takes me into my next thing. So recently I went through about, 4 shelves worth of books, and I actually took them to Half Price Books. Now, for those of you watching, I don't know if you have a Half Price Books in your area or not, but we have several in my city. And essentially Half Price Books is a store where you can buy gently used books for half price. Now, sometimes they're not always half the original selling price. Sometimes they're a little bit more, but sometimes they're a little bit even less than half. So it just really depends on, what you're getting. And Half Price Books is not necessarily like a witchy bookstore, but they do have a metaphysical and occult section. They also have just different religious sections, like you can find Christian books and Buddhist books and Islamic texts and things like that. So you can find various different religious books at Half Price Books. And for you witches out there watching, also think outside the box here. Some of those culinary books or those horticulture books, gardening books, and historical books can also be incorporated into your occult practice as well, because you'll be surprised what sort of magical nuggets you can kind of find in other genres of books aside from purely metaphysical or occult based books. So I went to Half Price Books and I took about 4 large tote bags worth of books. And I was fully expecting them to give me like $1, $2, $3. For those of you who don't know, Half Price Books also buys gently used books. That's kind of like the whole thing there. It's kind of like a Goodwill in a way, except Goodwill doesn't pay you and Half Price does. However, it's kind of like disc replay, if you're familiar with that, where you can take in a bunch of CDs and consoles and they'll give you, $5, $10, and sometimes they'll give you more for in-store credit versus cash. Now, I took about 4 bags worth and I was completely thinking that they were only going to give me I was thinking, okay, if I get $10 from these 4 bags, I will be lucky. However, to my surprise, I actually got almost $30 back from the books that I had taken, which a lot of the books that I had taken were psychology books, actually, that I've inherited from my grandmother's practice that she closed because she's retiring. So I've had a lot of her books from her practice that I've held on to, and I've definitely kept some of them, like her hypnotherapy books and her other sort of psych books and her archetypal books. I've kept those, but I don't necessarily need 15 copies on the same subject material necessarily. And I wanted to make more room for more of my witchy books, which if you've watched a couple of my past videos, you've seen that I kind of have a little bit of a reading list going already, but I think that's kind of like a very stereotypical witch trope in the sense that we buy these books and we have every intention to read all of them, but then our squirrel brain kind of catches our attention and we pick up on something else. And so we start reading another book and we have a bunch of a third of the way or halfway finished witchy books that are still sitting in our reading list. One thing that's really helped me a lot is I joined a witchy book club. And by joined, I mean I kind of started it, but I'm not the only person who helps orchestrate it. So I would say that myself and one of my coven mates and our local witchy community kind of really put it together and put it on. And it's something that has really helped me stay focused in the to know aspect of the witch's pyramid, or the scholarly aspect of the craft. And it's something really cool. It's called the Indie Witches Book Club, which there's a Facebook group and it's completely free to anyone who would like to join. So if you're interested in joining a witchy book club, feel free to check it out on Facebook. Once again, that's the Indie Witches Book Club. I'll see if I can put it down here on the screen for you. We have an online meetup, and then we also have an in-person meetup at the shop. And these happen every other month. So basically every 2 months, we're picking out a new book. And right now, the community has picked Backwoods Witchcraft by Jake Richards, I believe, which is an Appalachian conjure style of magic. And so I've been reading that, and that's been something that's really interesting. And it's not something that I necessarily would have been drawn to initially. And how we typically pick these books is we will have several selections of different books available for the whole community of the book club to vote on. And whatever book gets the most votes by the deadline for voting is the book that is selected. And then, like I said, we meet up every other month and we kind of dissect the book, whether it be online or in person, and it's a lot of fun. So the book club is definitely something that I'm passionate about and that I really enjoy being a part of. And I've always wanted to be a part of a witchy book club, but it just seemed like the clubs that would pop up wouldn't last very long, or they would fall apart, or people would lose interest. And I get it. Life gets busy and I totally understand. I'm excited that I'm part of an active club now, and with a group of people who really push me and motivate me to consistently thirst for knowledge. I actually have a cup, which I meant to bring it into this video, but it says, cup says smart women thirst for knowledge. And it's just a really cute cup that my grandmother gave me, and I really appreciate it and cherish it and love it. And I meant to have it here in this video as I had made myself tea, but I was too excited to start filming. So the tea is still in my kitchen. And I guess I will just reheat that after this video. But yeah, I think when it comes to occult education, it's always important to consistently be reevaluating our practice and being open to learning and receiving different ideas. I think that's the best way to keep a dynamic practice. And I really like how Teias said in her video, why it's important basically to be a well-read witch. That video is really good. I recommend that you check that out as well. I will try to link that down in the description, but I really enjoyed her video, and I also posted that in our Indie Witches book club. So anyway, I had gone to Half Price Books, and like I said, I fully expected them to give me like $7, $8, $9, maybe $10 for the 4 bags of books that I had brought in. However, I actually got like almost $30. So I got a few more books. I sold some books and then got some more books. And that is kind of how it works for me at Half Price Books. I often will bring in some books, and then while they are going through them and giving me a buying offer, I will look through some of the occult books that they have and see if any are speaking to me at the time. So this specific Half Price Books location that I had gone to, last time I was there, I really wasn't super impressed with some of their selection, but this time I was shocked as to how much they actually had. And I don't know if maybe like some LHP or trad witches had recently gotten rid of some of their collection, but the amount of Goetias that I found at Half Price Books was kind of shocking because I haven't actually ever seen a Goetia at a Half Price Books before. I also got the Book of the Law, which at one point in time I did have a copy of this, have no idea where it went, which according to what I've heard from other practitioners, that's pretty like common for the book. Maybe I gave it away to someone at one point in time and just can't remember, or maybe I've misplaced it. I'm not really sure. But when I saw the Book of the Law at Half Price Books, I was super excited. It was only $12.49. So I had to get it, and I'm looking forward to rereading this. You know, this is definitely kind of like a heavier text, for sure. This is not something that I will necessarily just be breezing through. And it's something that I'll probably like read a little bit of and then put down and read a little bit of and put down. But I think that this Book of the Law is one that is especially interesting because like Georgina here on YouTube has said, like it's a book that is not meant to be interpreted for you. So you kind of have to read it and then kind of interpret it for yourself. You know, Aleister Crowley's work here. So I know that Crowley can be kind of a catalyzing figure, so kind of take it or leave it. But I do think that as a witch in this occult space, it's good for you to kind of be familiar with the Book of the Law and at least kind of have like your thoughts and opinions together on the matter. So this is a book that is on my reading list in order to kind of like reassess some of my thoughts on this. Because when I first picked up the Book of the Law, I think I was probably like maybe 22 or 23 years old. I think it'll be interesting to kind of reassess and see like if it's what I remember from reading or not. I also picked up this book here, which is Egyptian Magic. They had a lot of copies of this book, so I'm not really sure why that is. I'm not sure if maybe like a bookstore like went out of business and they took a bunch of their books to half price, but this was only $6.99, and it's the Egyptian Magic book, a history of ancient Egyptian magical practices, including amulets, names, spells, enchantments, figures, formulae, supernatural ceremonies, and words of power. And Sahir, you know, Arabian conjure is something that I've always kind of been interested in, and it's always been a part of my practice in terms of like planetary magic, astrology, working with jinn, and I feel like Egyptian magic can fall into Sahir as well, because it is literally like linked with the Middle East, and so connecting more to that, I think this book will help. The back of the book here, it says, how did magical amulets ward off the evil eye? What role did scarabs serve in granting immortality? And learn about the Egyptian magic from names of power to spells and talismans. So I'm really excited to kind of get into this book also. It's by E.A. Wallace Budge. Not really super familiar with that author, but yeah, I'll have to let you guys know what I think about this book. Or if you've read this book, comment down below and let me know what you think. And then I saw this book, which this is one that I'm like kind of excited about. I feel like the teenage edgelord in me like squealed for joy when I saw this. And this is Energy Magic of the Vampire: Secret Techniques for Personal Power and Manifestation by Dawn Webb, author of Overthrowing the Old Gods. So just the cover of this alone kind of like caught my attention, plus energy vampirism and everything having to do with vampire has always really like caught my eye and drawn me in. And I've made videos in the past before kind of talking about empaths and energy vampires, psi vamps, sanguine vamps, things like that, and how, in my opinion, my controversial yet brave opinion, I think that they're two sides of the exact same coin. You know, I think energy vampires get shit on a lot by empaths. And the funny thing to me is that, in my opinion, they're kind of the same thing. I mean, energy vampires are known to pull energy from people, things, and places around them, and do empaths not do the same thing by absorbing energy? I kind of think that they're two sides of the same coin there. So the back of the book says, in this initiatory guide, Dawn Webb explains how to learn from the myth of the vampire to gather, use, and store energy for magical power, manifestation, and personal liberation. A master of the Order of the Vampire within the Temple of Set, the author shares a 9-month process to awaken and initiate you as a vampire and allow you to actualize your hidden potential. So I don't know if this book will be any good or not. Like I said, the teenage edgelord in me is kind of what was drawn to this. And even still, as an adult, like I'm very drawn to all things vampiric. So I'm looking forward to giving this a read. This was also $12.49 at Half Price Books. And I have looked up some reviews of this as well. And it seems to be very hit or miss. Like people either love this book or they hate this book. So let me know if you've read this book and what you think of it. I also picked up the medicine cards, which have like totem animals on them. And I've seen this deck a lot. I feel like it's an older deck and it's one that I've always kind of wanted. When I used to work at a new age store, several of the readers had it there. And so I always kind of wanted it, but I also didn't really know quite how I felt about incorporating a more Native American sort of based deck into my practice. You know, animal medicine in general is definitely something that I'm interested in, and especially if you've watched my last video on shapeshifting or hedge witchery, I think it kind of ties in there. And I ended up picking it up because it was literally less than half of the price that it sold for on Amazon. So I kind of felt like it was meant to be to an extent, and I think I'm going to be using that deck more so in the sense of like using it for altar representation or spell work as opposed to using it for divination. Okay, that's kind of my occult education, Half Price Books, sort of thoughts and rambles. Let me know what books that you guys are currently reading, and if you're reading Backwoods Witchcraft currently, or if you're interested in Appalachian Conjure, let me know what you think of that book, as that's kind of one that I'm currently reading and trying to dissect and get my thoughts together for book club. So make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, check out all of my links down below, and until next time, guys, blessed be.